Extraterrestrials. They are visitors from a destroyed planet, and this is what they explain to a family abducted by these space aliens. Alien abduction cases in which witnesses have the opportunity to communicate with these visitors, quote unquote, they have encountered are particularly interesting because in many of these cases, those beings really, some truly amazing information is given that may bring us a little closer to solving this mystery. We'll refer to one of these special cases where some beings on a strange vessel really revealed a unique story to the people they kidnapped. We go to the year 1978, specifically the night of June 19, to meet five people traveling by car. The Mann family, consisting of John and his wife Gloria, her sister Frances, and the two daughters. We are in the United Kingdom, where our protagonists are leaving the town of Berkshire in the direction of Brockworth. It's a 1.5 hour journey that they know well because they have traveled several times. They leave for their destination at 9:30 a.m. When they have already been on the road for more than half an hour, the girls are asleep in the back, but the three adults see a bright white light appear in front of the vehicle. They keep driving while looking at the moon. How can they be looking at the moon? Because it's 9:30 in the morning. But anyway, for a little more than well, sometimes the moon does appear in the sky. You could see it faintly. So they kept driving around looking at the moon on the other side for a little more than a kilometer. This strange light seems to follow them at some distance. John then decides to stop the car and get out of the car to get a better look. At the same time, another reddish light appears on the other side of the object, which begins to grow and grow rapidly. It approaches them, and as they could see, it was an object of enormous dimensions. "Get back in the car," shouted his wife Gloria in near panic, while John seems to be in a trance. However, as quickly as possible, they tried to escape the place and these objects. After a few kilometers, the family realizes that something unusual is happening. They are no longer on the same main road that they were driving before, on a secondary road that they do not recognize. Everyone feels like they're traveling a short distance off the ground, and John thinks the car is moving automatically on its own. Similarly, it seems to them that they are in an unrealistic environment in which they see various patterns and elements of the landscape repeated over and over again, as if they were in a paradoxical situation, as if the environment they see is a simulation, something artificial. But they can see from time to time how the same light continues to have them at a good distance in a preemptive way, as if it does not want to lose them. The family continues their journey for a long time until they reach a location and everyone is relieved to see buildings. They finally reach their destination when they realize they have arrived an hour later than expected. The trip could not have taken them this long without anyone noticing, so John calls the Air Force to report the sighting and the incident. It's reported that they received several calls regarding the same object, and that after contacting the rest of the air services, they were assured that nothing had flown during that period of time. Nothing, that is, from the Air Force or anything else. So the next day, John, who was still nervous, tried to find the same road they passed to no avail. At some point, all the family members discovered that they have a very similar mark on different parts of the body, except for one more that they all have behind the right knee. The mystery comes to a head for the family when one of the daughters, Natasha, tells them about intense migraines she experienced with rare people with huge eyes. John then finds hypnotherapist Jeffrey McCartney, whereupon he, his wife, and his sister begin a session through which they could not have imagined what they would discover before starting it. Although each individual, they all told the same story. For his part, John recalled that when he got out of the car, he saw the craft approaching until it was not far from where he was, and he also saw 8 very tall figures dressed in metal overalls and helmets approaching the car and take the whole family inside through a dense fog to reach the craft with a beam of light. In other words, they were beamed into the craft. When they became aware of themselves in a huge circular-shaped room full of humanoids, the whole family headed into another room where three male faces with pale skin, blue eyes, and fair hair greeted them, saying the following. I guess they were the tall whites, what we call. Now, they said, "Please, on our ship, you must not be afraid. We do not want to harm you in any way. We will examine you first of all to see if you are the same as us, and next we will answer any questions you have, and we'll show you around our craft. And when we're done, we'll get you back to your car just like you never stopped," they said to him. The adults were moved to separate quarters, leaving the girls to stay with their mother. Two of the female-like beings escorted John into another room, where he was placed in a position very similar to a dentist's chair, where the being examined him while another stood at some sort of control panel until a removed item made the person to lose consciousness. The next morning, he remembered he was waking up in the same space as the two female beings talked to a male figure in a language he did not recognize, and after they finished their conversation, this new presence addressed him in English to say it was called Anuxia, and that they had no intention of harming them. Frances, Gloria's sister, was also examined in a similar chair, and was explained that the physical resemblance between the humans and the creatures was remarkable, apart from only a few minor differences. Then one of the beings introduced himself to Uxia Olia and tried to teach her to pronounce it. He also mentioned that they were pilots and that they came from the planet Janus, Janos, that this planet was several thousand light years from Earth, but that it only took 2 of our years to get here to Earth. He also explained that certain events in their planet had taken place thousands of years ago, and that he was going to teach them about them, so that they were each shown something like a sequence of videos relating to the history of the planet. It was an absolutely dramatic story about their home, their planet, which looks very similar to Earth, with water and vegetation, big cities and houses in rural areas. Around this planet revolved 2 small moons, which gradually over the millennia imperceptibly reduced their speed and came dangerously close to the planet. The inhabitants knew of the great disaster that was coming, and that at some point they would have to leave their planet. They sent different ships to explore other worlds in order to find one that they could inhabit. They found Earth a perfect place. They had even built a massive vessel that orbited the planet capable of housing its entire population once a disaster occurred, which took place much sooner than expected. The disaster started with earthquakes and huge rocks that seemed to boil, falling everywhere, destroying everything. And while their entire civilization was destroyed and the inhabitants screamed in terror, those who could board their small ships flew to the floating city in space, avoiding the rain of destruction from the moon's crash fragments falling onto their planet. They managed to escape. Too many lost their lives, and those who could not reach the flying craft ran for shelter in undergrounds and undamaged vessels, trying to rescue those they could. Eventually, the planet's surface was filled with rock and dust so thick they couldn't see through it. Adding to all this devastation was the severe radiation caused by the destruction of all their nuclear plants, meaning that even the last survivors should not be spared. So in other words, these extraterrestrials had nuclear power. Now somehow they go on to say they arrived at their chosen new home, our planet Earth. New problems arose as they had to find out if they could live with us, because they could not float in space forever. They needed a place to settle down, but they also did not want to cause any trouble for what they wanted and what they needed. At the same time, they wanted to make sure and reassure humanity that their presence here would not cause war, either between humans or between humans and themselves. They would rather die than be the cause of a war on Earth, they claim. They indicated that it was difficult for them to come out publicly because some would intend to use their knowledge to control others, so they decided to come in small groups and stay together, and that those who remained on the mothership in floating state above Earth would use it as the outpost. After all of this, John expressed concern about the beings examining their psychology and bodies to see if they, like humans, were similar enough to be able to live together. They told him that the reason they did this was because, as they revealed, they had briefly left planet Earth in other migration attempts, but upon their return after millennia in Earth's years, they were concerned that humans had developed significant physical differences in this period of time, which for them was short. But the time had come for their departure, and before leaving their ship, they were asked to drink a liquid similar to a clear soda, explaining that it would help them forget the event of them being abducted, of course, because if they remembered it, it would cause them a lot of trouble. However, they were told not to worry and that they would remember everything in due time. This very interesting case, which tells us a dramatic story, was studied by Frank Johnson and revealed in his book, The Janus People, A Close Encounter of the Fourth Kind, where there are endless details of the catastrophic event on the planet of beings, but also much of the revolutionary hypnosis sessions. Since the above story is true, one conclusion that's drawn is that these beings chose to go unnoticed to settle on our planet secretly after evaluating many people and concluding that this was their best option because they would not want to cause a disturbance and other kinds of unrest in our society. That's if we want to believe them. It should also be noted that it is one of the few cases in which the beings visited Earth do not refuse to reveal their identity and declare absolute cordiality for their hospitality here, even if secretly, while not wishing to cause any trouble, harm to humanity simply by their presence. Nevertheless, and on the condition that this is a true story, a question is left in the air which no one probably noticed. Why did one of the girls, Natasha, have nightmares about these beings with big eyes? Was it a psychological disorder created in her mind? Could it be that these beings are not telling the truth about their incredible story, but made it up in search of compassion? No one can know. Obviously, if they were malevolent, they would pretend they were not. This I've translated for you from a Greek article. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.